Salut! In this video we're going to be talking about the VAT roller coaster that we've just gone through last week. Just as Prime Minister François Bayrou followed through the 2025 budget, we discovered that a new VAT threshold of 25,000 euros was to be applied to all businesses in France from the 1st of January 2025. Now, this understandably raised massive concerns for micro entrepreneurs and small businesses alike, and within a week the topic was put on hold by the economy minister, Mr. Eric Lombard, and he confirmed that the Commission would be reviewing the VAT issue, and so far this will not apply. So in this video I'm going to recap the whole topic, so I'm going to explain what happened with the 2025 budget, and I will re-explain how voting a budget works in France, so you know what happens in the future. We'll be talking about what is the issue with the VAT threshold at 25,000 euros, what will happen next with the VAT in France, and I'm also going to be talking about actions that you can take in the meantime to defend the micro-entrepreneur status. Now, as you can see, this video is time sensitive, so if you're watching it in 2027, you want to watch my latest video on VAT. And I'm creating a specific category in business where I'm talking about social charges, VAT changes for people who are in business in France. But the principle that I'm going to be explaining here remain the same, and they're interesting to understand, especially as we vote a budget, because quite often, like in 2024, we heard many scary topics about JITs. We're going to hear more in 2024 about JITs and VAT. You want to understand how voting a budget and a law works, so you don't get worked up or stressed out as soon as you hear something, so you can see, okay, which stage are we at in voting this law, so you can see how risky it becomes or not. Another point is that I'm not going to be editing this video much because I'll be away for a few days next week and I won't have the time to do it, but I want you to have the information so at least you feel a bit more confident about what's happening and things start to make sense. Now, for those who don't know me, I'm Valerie Aston and I help expatriates prepare, create and manage their first business in France. What happened with the 2025 budget? So let me start by recapping the context and giving you the full story so you understand what happened. As you know, France has been struggling to put together a budget for a month. Prime Minister François Bayrou presented his 2025 budget to the Parliament at the end of January, and he decided to skip the parliamentary negotiation by forcing the budget through using what we call the 49.3, le 49.3. It's a law that enables him to avoid any discussion about the law and just pass it through to the next stage. This enabled him to move to the next step, which is to go to the Senate. If I summarize, when we vote a budget in France, it's presented by the government to the Parliament, and then different options are discussed and presented by deputy to make changes. Once this is voted, this is passed on to the Senate, and then the Senate will do the same. The senator might make some amendments, and usually they look at the law and say, okay, this doesn't quite work out, and then they send it back to the Parliament, and then we have a last vote. So that's the process of voting a budget in France. However, as I've just mentioned, the Prime Minister can decide to skip one stage by saying, okay, 49.3, I'm skipping the parliamentary stage and going straight to the Senate, which is what happened this week. So suddenly, when we skip that stage of, the discussion at the Parliament is usually when we hear, okay, what are the different things within that budget, what's going to happen, and we hear about what is new. But because it skipped straight away to the Senate, suddenly overnight we discovered that somehow a new VAT threshold of 25,000 euros was to be applied to all businesses, and that was added to the budget. Now, this means that businesses reaching 25,000 euros of sales per year would have to start charging VAT on top, so 20% or 10%. Most people are on 20%, 10% is for specific industries, like for instance, like renovation work within the building trade. Knowing that the current VAT threshold, which were voted last December, were actually at 37,500 euros for services, so manual services and profession libérale, and they were at 85,500 euros for what we call activité commerciale, so buy to resell, trade, e-commerce, G. So it sounds a bit mad that we just voted an increase, and if you watch my other video, I'll add a link at the end of this one. Last December, we voted a slight increase for both of those services and trading activities, and suddenly 1 month later, we slash it down right back to 25,000 euros. Let's be fair, this was a huge shock to small business owners and freelancers, and especially as no mention of this had been done before. I mean, I tried to keep a tab of what's happening. I didn't see it. Actually, the only place I saw it mentioned was last December by FNAE, la Fédération Nationale des Auto-Entrepreneurs. It's a national body that represents micro-entrepreneurs. And last December, they launched a petition on their website talking about the 25,000 euros threshold for VAT. And at the time, I remember quite clearly that to me it sounded a bit mad, and I thought, hey guys, are you trying to ramp up your membership by scaring people talking about 25,000 euros threshold? And actually, they were right, because they actually read the text of laws are about to be voted, so they can see what's happening, which most of us probably don't know about. So if I go back to my story now, and Mr. Bayrou, the Prime Minister, he forced his budget through. And to me, when I saw this, I thought, it's okay, we still have the Senate, and usually the Senate pinpoints things that don't seem quite right. But fortunately, the Senate voted through that budget too, mainly because France is in a bit of economic instability at the moment. We need to have a budget so we have some stability and we can start moving forward. The fact that we've had no budget for so long for businesses is a sign of instability. People don't know where they could buy things, so it just makes it harder to trade. So further to the uproar of bodies representing micro-entrepreneurs, such as the FNAE, which I just mentioned, and Union des Auto-Entrepreneurs, which is another major body representing micro-entrepreneurs, the press relayed the huge impact that this would have on small businesses. Over 250,000 euros a micro-entrepreneur potentially impacted, and over 100,000 entreprises individuelles, so sole traders under the next regime réel, so over 350,000 euros businesses impacted. And then finally, on the 6th of February, Eric Lombard, the economy minister, confirmed in the evening news on France 2 that the VAT measure was put on hold and to be reviewed by a specific commission. So if I show you this extract from, so that's an article from France Info, where we see the Minister of Economy, Eric Lombard, and confirms that basically the auto-entrepreneur raved about the VAT, and they talk about auto-entrepreneur, micro-entrepreneur, yes, it's the same thing, but saying this measure is on hold, and he actually said, so he confirmed that the measure was on hold, and at least we say, phew, we can relax a bit, but there's more to be told about this. So the thing is, it's a good news that this has been put on hold. However, it's not the end of this story, because the Commission is going to be working on this to decide what is that final VAT threshold. And my concern at the moment is more that, okay, they might still decide to lower it, but we don't know what it is. And that's why we need to have pressure on the government, on those bodies and on the deputies, so we can see what is the final threshold that will be voted. So I will explain in a moment what you can do about this. What is the issue with the 25,000 euros threshold? If you're in business, I'm pretty sure that you already get the idea. If you add 20% of VAT or even 10% of VAT onto your prices, you're going to be becoming very expensive to your customers. And you're about to either lose 20% of profit margin and income. So either you just impact the price on top so that your customers become more expensive, so you might lose some trade. Either you cut your margin and you are losing some income. So knowing that we are talking about small businesses making 25,000 euros of sales, this is a massive impact. We're talking about income precarity and not the top 500 entrepreneurs like Louis Vuitton, LVMH. Here, this is really small businesses. The reality is that this measure was very unfair and impacting entrepreneurs very evenly. If we're talking about B2B, providing services to other businesses, they wouldn't have been really affected, because if you become VAT registered, you charge VAT to your customers, and themselves being a business as well, they're VAT registered, so they also claim it back. So it just means needing to have a bit more cash flow, but there's no big impact. But for entrepreneurs working business to consumer, so the end consumer, this meant that your prices would have gone by 20% or 10% overnight. And think about all the language teachers, coaches, DIY services, craft jewelry, delivery van, e-commerce, nail and eyelashes extension, cleaning services. So this had the potential to push businesses to close down or to go bust, push small entrepreneurs' income towards precarity, and also entice the black market so that people wouldn't declare they would stay at 24,900 euros in order not to go above the 25,000 euros. So pretty bleak picture. And with 25,000 euros of sales, once you take the social charges off 24.6% for instance for services, you are below the minimum wage in France. So we're really talking about precarity, and I have even talked about taking off the fixed expenses for those entrepreneurs. This would also increase inflation for the end consumer and would also kill local businesses. We're not talking about national and international companies, we're talking about the small deliverman, the market stall, the home services in your local area. So you can see why this topic went viral overnight. And Madame Véronique Louwagie, the trade minister, initially defended the law by stating that it was to simplify things because VAT was too complex with different levels. And she also used the usual arguments of the micro-entrepreneurs having an unfair advantage over other businesses. And strangely enough, when you look at one of the interviews that she was doing, you can see an argument which is always presented by artisans. They're very against the micro-entrepreneur, and you can see on this one. So this was an extract again from the France Info article. It says « Cette mesure fait l'objet d'une demande des artisans pour maintenir plus d'égalité entre les autres entrepreneurs et les artisans. » So again, strangely enough, it's the artisan putting pressure because they think that micro-entrepreneurs are not fair, have advantages over them. So you can see they've been lobbying for a while, and this is why it went through. So the minister talking about VAT being too complex is a bit of a joke because you can't really compare somebody who provides services with a high margin with someone who's buying to resell and has high expenses. That's really not understanding what the activity is about, although she's the economy minister. So I don't want to be seeming to go into a rant here, but you can see what the issue is. Sometimes the deputy who represent your department or even ministers don't quite understand the reality of businesses, and this is why it's important for your voice to be heard, and we'll explain this a bit more in a moment. So what will happen with the VAT next in France? Now, according to Éric Lombard, the Minister of the Economy, the project has been put on hold and will be discussed by a commission. So in the meantime, the existing rules validated in December 2025 still apply. If I take an extract of the newspapers that I've collected my phone, so on this one, he says, pendant ce temps de cette concertation, we've got a French lesson here, cette mesure sera suspendue, c'est-à-dire que les auto-entrepreneurs ne devront pas s'inscrire pour payer la TVA. So basically saying, okay, while this is on hold and we have the commission looking at the details, forget the 25,000 euros. You don't need to go and get your VAT number. You don't need to activate your VAT. We apply the 2024 laws. So let me remind you the stages of a budget being voted so you can see where we stand now and the time scale that we're looking at. So normally the first step is the Parliament discussion and vote, unless the Prime Minister decides to use the 49.3, which happened. The second step is the discussions and vote at the Senate. The third step is back to the Parliament to be voted again if changes were submitted to the Senate. The fourth step is the implementation decree, which is published, and then the law is official. And the fifth step that most people don't know is what we call the PLFR, the projet de loi de finances rectificative. And rectificative is the most important part, is once the law has been voted, the implementation decree has been passed, we still have the potential to change little things within the law or the budget that aren't quite working through that PLFR, and basically there's a commission that is reviewing it, and which means that within a few months there could be a few changes. So as you can see, for us, what's going to happen now, and I guess that's what he referred to by the commission, but that's what Mr. Lombard referred to by the commission, once the law is voted, and the budget should apply by the 1st of March. I would expect that by May, June or June, July, the Commission will have done their work, and then a rectification would be voted if he's thinking about using the PLFR, the projet de loi de finances rectificative. So it's important to see where we stand in those stages: Parliament, Senate, Parliament, implementation decree, and rectification. Because last year we already had a lot of uncertainty about JITs. and now that's probably going to happen again this year. The JITs and the VAT is going to be discussed again and again. You want to spot whereabout in that stage we are, so we can see whether it's become more of a reality or not. Because when we are at the parliamentary stage, especially at the start of a budget, we just hear something and it's opposite most of the time, because each deputy is going to bring some potential changes to the law. The higher we get, the less flexibility there is to change things. So to summarize, I expect that final change about VAT is going to be taking place in May, June, July. And in the meantime, we still apply the rule from 2024. Now let's talk about taking action to defend your micro-entrepreneur status. I'm always avoiding to mix business and politics, but today, if you're a micro-entrepreneur, I'm asking you to take action to defend your regime and your status. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to go on strike, although that would feel very French and integrated. I'm going to ask you to sign a petition from the FNAE, Fédération Nationale des Auto-Entrepreneurs, to make sure that your voice is heard about the VAT rules, so that the governments and the deputies know how much this represents to you. So the FNAE, as I mentioned, is a body representing the interests of micro-entrepreneurs, and they always keep an eye on new projects of law, raising the alarm when major shifts are being discussed, and they're defending your right by publishing reports, press releases, alerting the press, representing your regime and defending it. Their president, Grégoire Leclerc, is very good at simplifying issues so the press and the politics understand the problem. So I'm inviting you to go and sign this petition. I will add the link below the video in the description. Because yes, the VAT threshold is on hold, but we don't know the end of the story, how much will it end being. So you want someone to represent your interest. You want the government and the deputy to realize that many small businesses are worried about this. And I think that will come useful, but that's your decision. I'm just encouraging you to sign it. So now you understand the whole falafel about that VAT roller coaster story that's been happening. And just know that in the meantime, the rules now are applicable are the VAT rules that were voted in December. So I would recommend that you watch this next video, which I recorded recently, where I explain the VAT rules voted in the 2024 budget that applies in 2025. And I also recommend that you download my macro entrepreneur fact sheet, where you have the VAT thresholds, and whenever things will change, I will also update this document. But for now, I'm quite confident that it's going to stay like this for at least 5 months. So here we are, we know where we stand now. If you signed a petition, just add in a comment, petition signed, and let me know what you thought of this video. À bientôt, salut!